Hey, it's Go with EMP here, don't mind the mess behind me, but I'm going to show you how to assemble the S650 HDPE diffuser, and all you'll need for that is either a 3/8 or a 10mm socket. Either one will fit. I mean, they both fit pretty well, but yeah, just 3/8 or 10mm, that'll work just fine. And an 1/8" Allen wrench to get the 1032 bolts on the nylock nuts. So when it comes to the size of the blades on the diffuser itself, you're going to want to get the smaller but not the smallest blades on the two inside slots, and then the biggest blades on the outside too. And kind of pulling your attention over here to the side blades, the way you can tell them apart is that those have a straight, just cut edge on the back, and these have that, you know, odd shape to accommodate for the rear of the Mustang. So we will get those assembled now, and I will show you how to do that. All right, so I'm going to start on the left blade over here, which is going to be the big blade. And you're going to have to put a little bit of pressure. I'm trying to put it in that slot, but it's designed to be that way, so it's even strong without the screws, but you're still going to need the screws. And since we get a lot of questions about this, for HDPE, you will only have one screw on the actual center section to put the L brackets into. On aluminum, you'll have two. So for aluminum, you will need two L brackets over here and over here. And you will only need to use one more screw and one more nylock nut for this on aluminum. But for HDPE, we'll just be using two nylock nuts and two 1032 screws. So since this is HDPE, we'll do that. But, for installing this, we're going to start with the hole that's on the center section that I was just talking about, and slot it through to where the threads are coming through the bottom. If I could find the hole somewhere, there it is. So the threads will be coming through the bottom and not going out the top. We don't want it to look like that because that looks bad. And you're going to be putting the nylock nut on that, just finger tight for now. So trying to get that finger tight. And then for the screws that go into the blades, you're going to want to make it to where the screw goes into the center of the center section. So since we're on this side, we're going to make them go that way. And then you got to put the other nylock nut on there, finger tight again. And then we will now use our tools that I was telling you about earlier, the 10mm socket and the 1/8" Allen wrench, and get these tightened on there. Don't get them too tight, just get both of them decently tight, and then after they're seated properly, do the final tightening after that. So I am going to get these decently tight real quick. And for this, you can have somebody hold up the other side for you, but you are able to do it by yourself. It just might move around a little bit on you. We also recommend that you have a towel sitting underneath your diffuser while you're doing this, so that none of the blades start dragging or anything like that. All right, so this is them fully installed, and like I was doing in the video, install the screw that's on the blade first so that it can actually pull this screw onto the farthest centermost position on that hole, and then tighten this one. So this one first, then that one. And now we're going to install the other side so you can see what I mean by mirror the screws on either side, which I'm sure you already knew, but I'm just making sure. So again, got to put the blade on there, put a little force behind it. That's good. And now we are going to install it into that hole right there. Which, trying to see if you can see it some more. Alright, so like I said, mirror the screws. So this screw goes towards the EMP. So through this side and out the other. And put a nylock on that screw. Finger tight. And then put a screw down through that hole. Not going that way. make sure the threads are going out the bottom. Don't do what I just did. So, again, trying to find that screw hole. There it is. All right, thread out the bottom. And then we are going to put that nylock on there. There we go. Finger tight. And back to our tools. But I'm gonna skip this part because you already know how to do that. But we are going to show you how to assemble the side blade now. So that is the center section. All right, so just really quick before we start the side blade assembly, I'm gonna show you that the blade that looks like this with the, you know, odd looking cutout in the back goes on these two slots, the two center slots, like I was saying earlier. Just making sure we get that point across. So a little bit of pressure and it's in there. So we're gonna start on these now. So use these blades, straight back edge, and once again, a little bit of pressure is fine. Don't be afraid to really pull it on there. And then, there we go, it's all good. So, for these, you're going to want to install the L bracket on this side. Not the side where it's got the rest of the material, this short end right here. And we are going to put it where the screws are facing that same short end. So, we're gonna get our nylock nuts screwed onto that. Right, pretty sure we are, yep. Finger tight again. And then same thing through the bottom for the next screw that goes through the actual side blade holder. So through the bottom like so. And then we'll get these nylock nuts put on there like that. Once again, finger tight. And also once again, tighten the screws that are on the blade first, and then that are on the flat part. So we will go ahead and get those tightened, and then I'll show you what that looks like and what the whole diffuser looks like when it's assembled. So something else I forgot to add with the side blades and the side blade holders is that make sure that they are mirrored from each other and you don't install them both looking like this, but one like this and one like this. So the one that I showed y'all that we assembled looked like that right there. So, or look like that, not this. You want it to look like this on the other one, not that. So here's what it looks like when it's assembled. You notice how we got the side blades mirrored from each other from both sides. And another thing I want to bring attention to, just to make sure you know how it's supposed to look whenever it's done, is the mirrored bolts. So you see we've got the nylock nuts on this side of both of these blades, and then this side of both of these blades. So the nylock nuts, all nylock nuts are supposed to be facing in towards the EMP. So that is the assembly section of this install video, and then we're just gonna go straight into installing it on the actual Mustang.
All right, so first we're gonna remove the two 7mm bolts that are right here. You know, not these that are holding on, you know, this pan here, but ones that are just in the plastic. You're gonna remove both of these. Okay, so now you're gonna take the number 8 silver screw. There'll be 2 of them, and you'll put it through the slot here, and then you're going to want to put it into the holes where you just took those 2 stock screws out of. So you got the 2 slots here, and the slots are so that you can pull it forward and backward a little bit and give it a little bit of adjustment on how far you want it from the back of the car. So we'll go ahead and get the first screw in. And these are just Phillips head. And with all these, you want to just, you know, get them a little bit snug, but not too tight, because you still want to be able to adjust it and then get it to where you want it, and then put your permanent, you know, placement install screws that we'll be doing next. Okay, so I got that in there, so now I'm just going to go ahead and put this one in here into this side, and then we'll move on to the other screws. Okay, so now you're going to want to use the spacer and the one fully black screw that will now be going into this hole that's in the center. So the spacer will go on top between the diffuser and the car. And it's easiest if you go ahead and put the screw in from the bottom, and then you can see the screw poking up, and then just put the spacer on top of it. And then, you know, we're using a power tool, but you know, we suggest that if you are using a power tool, that you don't fully tighten it with the power tool, that you just get it in there, but not fully tighten, and then you go back and hand tighten everything so that you don't strip out the plastic. Okay, so now you've got the slot over here on the side, and you're going to want to use 2 screws for this slot. You know, we've already, you know, adjusted it to where, you know, it's going to be. And then so with these screws, these are the permanent, you know, placement. So you'll just be putting 2 screws. You know, we usually try to put one, you know, as far forward as we can to give it, you know, stability this way, and then the other one as far back as we can, as long as it's still within the plastic, depending on how far you've pushed it back on your car. You got to make sure there's still a good amount of plastic that this screw is going to go into. So we'll start with this rearmost screw. And again, not tightening it up all the way, because using the power tool, we're going to go back with a hand screwdriver and get it done. And then we're going to make sure that we're getting in a good place with the plastic here. And sometimes you'll see that it might, you know, push up like that, but you just keep going and it'll pull the plastic down. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the side blades. And you're going to get up under here and then get it to go right to the back edge here. And then up like this. And then what we do is we use clips. You know, if you can get some sort of clip, maybe even a chip clip or something. And then we'll clip it up underneath to hold it in place so that we can make sure it's in the position that we like. You can also, you know, maybe stack something up, hold it up onto here, you know, or, you know, have a friend hold it. It's kind of hard to hold it in place yourself. But, you know, so we'll move on to clamping it in place and getting it positioned perfectly before we put the install screws in. Okay, so now we've got it clipped up under there. So we can now kind of look around, make sure that it's straight and how we want it to be installed. And then one of the things you can do is the 3, you know, screw holes that are in it, you can make sure that they're, you know, just under the edge where you're not going to see them, and you can line them up pretty straight with this edge, and then that'll get you really close to where you need to be. And then you can look at the edge here, you know, make sure that it's where you want it, it's at the angle that you want it, because you can rotate it a little bit and you know, get it how you want it. And then we'll move on to putting in the 3 screws. And sometimes we'll actually put, you know, this one on, we'll also clip the other side on so that we can make sure they're both exactly the same before we put any screws in. But if, you know, you can also go ahead and get the screws in this one, because you'll have it how you like it, then just match the other one to this side. Okay, so now you got your 3 holes. We've got this lined up exactly where we want it. And so we're just going to go ahead and put the black head screws into these holes. And of course, not over tightening. Let's go ahead and get this back one first. All right, and then you do the same for the other 2. And then for the middle screw, we'll be putting on the screw lock. We'll be putting this screw lock on, and we'll show that in the video as well. All right, so then you want to go back with the hand screwdriver and then tighten them up by hand, and you just get them just snug where it's holding back. You know, it's getting tight against it. Don't over tighten so you get it too much. And of course with this one, this is the one that we're going to be putting the screw lock on. So, you know, you'll be backing that one out and putting this screw lock on there. So then you'll also want to come over and tighten up these screws that were in the stock spot. Make sure they're good. And again with these, you know, of course not too tight. And then do the same for the other side over here, hand tightening them, and then also doing the screw lock on that one. And of course you got the middle screw, don't forget about it to get it tightened up. Okay, so for the screw locks, these here on HDPE, they'll be different on aluminum. You want to just take the screw, you know, you've already got it installed, and this is going to be the furthest back screw on the center section, and you'll install on this screw on each side of the center section. Then you'll also put one in the middle on the side pieces, you know, on the middle screw here on the side pieces. You know, you reach up inside and put it on there, but it's the same way to install. It's just the 4 screws you'll put it on. So what the first thing you do is just go ahead and loosen the screw back out. Yeah, just carefully do it so you're not stripping any plastic. And then to where you just got, you still feel the point there. And then you take your screw lock. The ones for aluminum are white, and they actually have EMP logos on it, but install will be the same. So you can see that the screw point is still there just a little bit. And then you put the hole over the screw tip. Might be a little tricky to find. Once you get it on there, then you might need to loosen it up a little bit more to make sure that this is going to lay flat. The screw lock is flat. And then you start screwing it back in there while holding the screw lock in place. And you want to double check, make sure you are getting it in there, and then get it screwed completely up in there, and then make sure it's tight. And of course don't get too tight because you don't want to strip all the plastic out. And then you just repeat this same procedure for the other 3 screws. All right, so on the sides, you got 1, 2, 3 screws. So you want to do the middle screw. So we've already pulled this one out, and we've got the screw lock on top of it. And also make sure it's good and flat, and you might have to hold it down kind of tight. You know, press down on it kind of hard while you're turning the screw, because you want it to stay flat to the plastic, so it gives it a good solid connection and it's holding it strong to the car.